The early days of 3D fighters were full of kung fu throwdowns and epic sword fights. But where were you gonna go if you wanted something a bit more horror-themed? Sure, you could try to get into War Gods, I suppose, but most fight fans opted instead to transform into monstrous animals in a game called Bloody Roar. While nowhere near as violent as Mortal Kombat or as stylish as DarkStalkers, this Hudson Soft fighter managed to impress critics and consumers alike, spawning 4 sequels, a manga, and even a cameo in an Eiffel 65 song. Turn back now if you don't want to know what happens next, because today we're going to spoil the stories and endings for the original Bloody Roar on the PlayStation. This is Game Over, the early years. You may know them as werewolves or animorphs, but in the Bloody Roar franchise, people who can transform themselves into animals are known as zoanthropes. You see, a biotech corporation known as Tylon has been experimenting on these zoanthropes in hopes of using their unique abilities to create the ultimate military weapons. But not everybody's on board with this plan, leading a number of these zoanthropes to come out of the shadows and fight back. One of those people is Yugo, a wolf man who's looking for answers after his father Yuji went missing under mysterious circumstances in the war with Tylon. He teams up with Gado, an old comrade of Yuji, who agrees to go on a mission to destroy Tylon and liberate all the victims of these awful experiments. There's just one problem, and it's that Tylon has a backup plan, and her name is Yuriko. No matter which fighter you choose, you'll need to defeat Yuriko in order to bring down Tylon, and that's no easy task. You see, this brainwashed girl has the power to transform into the Chimera, a massive beast that will rip you to shreds if you aren't careful. Thankfully, Yugo is able to defeat Yuriko and bring down Tylon. Yeah, that's great, but will they have the answers that he's looking for? Let's find out. Now that we know that Yugo's father was killed, it's time to go back to the very start and follow Gado. It seems that beyond being a professional mercenary and military genius, he's also a lion. You see, he was seriously injured and nearly lost his sight in the same war that cost Yuji his life, and Gado has been looking for revenge ever since. Let's go ahead and see if he can find peace after destroying Tylon. Alright, at this point, you're probably wondering who this Yuriko girl is, right? Well, as it turns out, she's the daughter of our next fighter, Mitsuko. This massive housewife is not only good at fighting, but she can also change into a wild pig. She's been on a quest to find her kidnapped daughter, and the trail has led straight to Thailand. Let's see what happens when Mitsuko gets closure. Alright, so it's probably worth mentioning that Yuriko's path also intersects with Alice, a rabbit zoanthrope who was able to escape the secret research lab after getting kidnapped as a child. While she's happy to have found freedom before she was brainwashed, she knows that many other kids were not as lucky, including one girl who helped her escape. That girl? Yeah, you guessed it, I'm talking about Yuriko. Alice uses her bunny rabbit abilities to break back into Thailand and save Yuriko from the experiments. Here is what happens next. Our next character is Bakuryu, a master of the ninja arts who moonlights as an assassin. He's been brought in to sabotage the efforts of Yugo, Alice, Mitsuko, and the rest of the zoanthropes. Obviously, his animal form is a mole because, of course it is. Yeah, he sucks, so I'm not especially sad to see him get this kind of ending. Now, if there's anybody out there who could come to Bakuryu's aid, the closest thing you're gonna get is Fox, who can turn into, well, you know. A good-looking narcissist who obsesses over beauty, Fox was abandoned as a child and raised in the slums. Something that ultimately led him to a life of crime and a job working at the same unit as Bakuryu as a kidnapper and a murderer. Here's the surprisingly sentimental ending to that story. Alright, so Fox isn't the only fighter with mommy issues, because Jinlong was forced to grow up with a neglectful father after his mother and sister died. Long ran away from home and honed his martial arts skills and zoanthrope powers, which of course led him down the path of becoming an underground assassin. This is what happens after you defeat Yuriko. Yeah, okay, so that last story was pretty heavy, so let's lighten things up by talking about Gregory Jones, a former ringmaster who can also shapeshift into a gorilla. He's bitter about the rapid changes happening to the entertainment industry and the impact that it's had on the circus. Look, Greg is basically the comic relief character, so his ending shouldn't surprise anybody. Here's what happens when he defeats Yuriko and confronts Yugo. First, before I say anything else, I feel like I need to apologize for the music. Now that you've heard the same bluesy riff 8 times in a row, it's probably going to be stuck in your head for the rest of the day. Yeah, sorry about that. I mean, look, it's not a bad riff or anything, but it sure would have been nice if the developers over at Hudson Soft had tossed in, like, I don't know, a second song? I know it's too much to ask for 8 different songs, so I'll just settle on, like, one more. It's really all I ask for. Alright, so when it comes to these endings, I feel like most of them suffer from the exact same problem, which is that they just aren't very satisfying. It's a combination of us not really caring about these characters and the weirdly fast pacing. I mean, that dialogue zips by at an alarming speed, almost as if it doesn't want you to actually notice how bad the writing is. We're really not even given a chance to comprehend what's happening. Compare any of these cinemas to Ryu's ending in Street Fighter 2, where we linger on him slowly walking down the road looking for his next fight. If that ending was in Bloody Roar, it'd be like 5 seconds long and come with an obnoxious blues riff. But hey, at least we get a cinema. That's more than people got when they played the original arcade version of this game, which I swear to you was actually called Beastorizer. This take on the game is a lot more bare bones than the PlayStation counterpart, but the pieces are all there. I mean, we still control fighters who can turn into animals and then take on Yuriko in the Tylon building. There's really not a whole lot to say about the arcade ending, so instead I'm going to use it to close out this episode of Game Over. Here's what happens after you beat Beastorizer. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Game Over, the early years. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we're going to be posting 2 more of these horror-themed episodes this month, including a big one on Halloween. There's also a whole playlist with over 160 of these episodes, and you should go check that out right now while you wait. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite horror-themed fighting game? Let me tell you, if your answer is War Gods, then be prepared to answer the question, why? I mean, seriously, why? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back tomorrow with a review of Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, which will be followed by a new episode of Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew. Oh boy, we still have a whole lot to talk about this week, so do me a favor and click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.